Hey everybody, I just want to do a quick check-in because this is kind of a big week in astrology, and it's also a big week in general because in the United States it is the primaries. And this is a really big deal right now because we have the power to change things. You know, there's a lot of upset right now at the way that things are, and reasonably so. And tomorrow is kind of a big deal because tomorrow is our chance to create a change. And I can't predict the absolute outcome of the event, but what I am seeing is that there is a huge energetic shift between the beginning of the week and the end of the week. So that tells us something. That tells us that this is going to be a big deal. So let's dig in. Tomorrow on the primaries, if you haven't voted already, you know, tomorrow's a big day to vote. Tomorrow, Uranus moves into the sign of Aries. Uranus has spent a long time in Aries. It recently moved into Taurus back in May, but tomorrow it's going retrograde and it's going to shift back into Aries for a little unfinished business. Aries is the sign of the individual. It's a sign of sovereignty. It's the sign that says, hey, I have a say in a matter. I fucking matter. Okay, so we are seeing that tomorrow. So hopefully one way that this can manifest is that we're gonna perhaps have a larger turnout to the primaries than we've had in a long time. The primaries are getting perhaps a little bit more attention than they have in previous elections because of how divided people are in what they believe and how much more dire of a need it is for people to turn out to the primaries. More people are starting to wake up that this is something we need to participate in just as much, if not more, than the presidential election, because it all matters. So, and then the rest of the month, Uranus opposes Venus. So this is waking up our collective sense of value, what's important to us. And that sense of value, that sense of importance, that sense of priority is what gets us to make a vote. And on an individual level, it's on a broad scale helping us to make significant and sweeping changes in our lives. And it might be a big change, it might be a small change, but this plays into the Venus retrograde that we will be finishing up later this month. On the 7th, Wednesday, the day after the primaries, the North Node shifts into the sign of Cancer. So for the past 18 months, the North Node has been in Leo. This has brought up the subject of leadership. You know, we've been talking a lot about leadership, you know, especially with a president that embarrasses half, if not more than half of us. So that's been a big thing. We've seen some leaders, like, for example, the leaders of North and South Korea make big steps towards repairing the past and trying to work together. So we've seen some big things around leadership. Even just from an entertainment point of view, we saw The Crown come out on Netflix, which is kind of celebrating the legacy of Queen Elizabeth. So it's been a lot about leadership on a collective level. On an individual level, it's been a lot about learning to enjoy, learning to have passion. And when this transit began 18 months ago with the North Node in Leo, a lot of us were angry. You were hearing about anger from a lot of people. It was like that passion. I'm feeling it. I'm going to express it. I'm not going to hold back. Leo is a very, very expressive sign, and you can always count on Leo to say how it feels. Express oneself. So often we don't get the lesson till the very end, which is something I was kind of starting to notice, but Stephen Forrest recently wrote an article confirming my intuition about, sometimes it takes like towards the end of the cycle of the nodal transit to really, really get the lesson, because I found myself over the summer, you know, I'd been concerned about how can I bring more enjoyment into my life, more passion, more creativity, but it was really over the summer with the Mars retrograde that it really clicked for me. It really set in, and I've been prioritizing space for more creativity and pleasure in my life because, you know, a lot of us have just been, you know, before that it was the Virgo transit and Jupiter was in Virgo, and it was all about hard work and bettering oneself and doing all those detailed things. So anyways, we get the lesson towards the end of it, but So we're going to start working with the North Node in Cancer, which has a lot to do with how we nurture ourselves and how we nurture others. I'm going to make a separate video for this, most likely, or write an article, because it's beyond the scope of this little check-in that I'm doing. But the North Node in Cancer is really about taking care. And, you know, we live in a time when, you know, the individual needs have been kind of scraped over in favor of corporate gain. And this is a trend that we've been seeing in the political sphere, where corporations take the cake over the individual. And, you know, we are seeing it with the whole healthcare thing, where healthcare is basically something treated as a privilege to have. So perhaps during this time we could start thinking about, on a collective level, how we can better take care of each other and better take care of ourselves. Because the South Node is in Capricorn, and that's all about ambition. And when that sign gets out of control, you know, and any sign can be expressed in a healthy way or a negative way, but sometimes when the sign of Capricorn on a collective level gets out of control, out of balance, it can manifest as greed. And we are seeing this in a huge way. Corporate greed, political greed, and greed is really the source of so many problems in this country right now. So the South Node is like the flush valve. We're going to try to get rid of some of those negative expressions, and we're going to start reaching more towards the sign of Cancer and the need to take care of ourselves and take care of others. So also on an individual level, many of us have been just so discontent and so upset with the way that things are, and it can be exhausting. Well, the sign of Cancer reminds us that sometimes just taking a day to chill, rest, recover, take care of yourself, you're gonna bounce back more rested and ready, able to get in there and do your duty. So these signs actually work really well together, because if we're gonna be a Capricorn or use the Capricorn energy, and we all have it somewhere in our chart, if we're going to do the Capricorn reach out into the world, we need to be properly rooted. And so that axis of Cancer Capricorn reminds us that we need to be rooted while we reach. If you look at a tree from like, I mean, you can't really look at it. You'd have to see a drawing of it, but the root system of a tree is so intricate, and it branches below the surface just as far as its branches reach up into the sky. So this is an important thing to remember when working with the Cancer Capricorn axis, which we are going to be working with in a huge way over the next 2 years with the nodes there, but also we have Saturn, we have Pluto, and now the eclipses, and eventually in time Jupiter as well, and even more. So we have to be rooted while we reach. We have to sustain ourselves. We have to nourish ourselves. We have to water ourselves, feed ourselves, give ourselves what we need to thrive. You know, if we think about the roots, we think of the root chakra, and that chakra has everything to do with survival. But how can we not only survive, but thrive? Because, so if we're focused on, say and this is something really common. I think it's a form of spiritual warfare right now, when you keep your population in a place where they are only in survival mode. They can only function from that root chakra. And when you are in survival mode, you're in fight or flight mode. You can't access your creativity, your sense of sovereignty, and your heart, and even the higher faculties. And that's what's going on here, folks. We are in a spiritual warfare when the powers that be want to keep us scraping by on the bare minimum so that we have just enough energy to go to work and pay taxes and, you know, put food on our table, and then we're too tired to do anything else. And that's a reality for a lot of people. right now. And this is a spiritual warfare, keeping people only in their root chakra. And it's when those basic human needs are provided for, it's when that energy can begin to rise into the higher chakras and eventually get to the heart. So what we need to do during this time is really strive for that heart activation, because that's where the nurturing takes place of the North Node in Cancer. So we're striving to get here, and we've already kind of got a head start a little bit, because with the North Node in Leo, that rules the heart. So we've already been working on trying to access the heart, and now it's time to kind of branch out and distribute that heart energy. And we can do that with our vote. We also have a new moon on the 7th, which is the day after tomorrow, Wednesday, the day after the primaries. And I love the Sabian symbol degree. For 15 degrees Scorpio, 11 minutes, it is a girl's face breaking into a smile. So perhaps some of us will have something to smile about. And I think that we will, because the following day, Jupiter moves into Sagittarius. And this is all about optimism, enthusiasm. It's that reminder of hope that we all need right now. We're all desperate for that sense of hope. Since Saturn went into Capricorn, I think we've all been kind of looking at things for what they are. And that's really necessary after 3 years of Saturn and Sagittarius, when we just were kind of, there were too many possibilities, right? And so with when Saturn went into Capricorn, we all kind of came down to earth. And I really noticed that in a big way in some of the aesthetic around the world. Everywhere you look, things are just a little bit more bare bones, classic. And but on from an individual perspective level, it's a willingness to see things for what they are. And that's really helpful. You know, we need both. We need to be able to look at things for what they are, for what they actually are, like from a clear, sober perspective. But then it's also helpful to have that sense of optimism. Yeah, we can do it. There's hope. I believe that there's a way. Change can happen. And for the next year, we're going to be working with both. But we get that sense of faith, that sense of optimism, that sense of hope coming in on Thursday. And that is indeed Jupiter's day. Jupiter, if you look at it in Latin, it's it translates into Thursday, jueves, Jupiter. So anyways, it goes into its home sign of Sagittarius on Thursday, and this is a big deal because Jupiter is in its home sign. And it's a big deal anyway because Jupiter changes signs once per year, but it doesn't always come back to its home sign. So Jupiter is home in Sagittarius. It's also home in Pisces. But this year we get Jupiter in its home sign, where when you're at home, you get to do whatever you want. You get to function in your way. You're not answering to anybody when you're home. And so that's how Jupiter gets to be. And Jupiter's natural function is optimism and belief and seeing the bigger picture and expanding. But we have to be careful because it can also be a lot of inflated fluff that really doesn't have much substance, right? And that's where we need Saturn and Capricorn. And we're lucky that Saturn's in Capricorn because we can work with both in the best way possible. We can be realistic and optimistic at the same time. So that's the best case scenario. And as long as we remember that there's still work to do, we can think as positive as we want. So I'm hoping that we all get a sense of hope. Well, trying to stay neutral, I'm saying that. What I would love to see is for this world to... Anyway, I'm not going to get into my idealism. Anyway, so the thing with Jupiter is that it's expansive, but it can only expand so far as Saturn. And Saturn says, stop. Let's look at things realistically. We've got work to do. And Saturn is all about putting the work in, showing up every day, getting up early, doing your duty, being disciplined, and in order to create the long-term goal that you want. So we're able to do both. And another nice thing coming in on the 9th, which is Friday is Venus trines Mars. And Friday is actually Venus's day, Venus, and it trines Mars. And this is excellent because Venus and Mars are two polarities, and some look at them as like male and female or whatever. I mean, that's a dualistic way of looking at them. But essentially, Venus is what we want, what we desire, and Mars is how we go get it. Mars is also another kind of desire. It's like a primal desire. It's like anger. It's the primal desires. It's like biological desire. And Venus is more up here. It's like what we like, what's pleasing to us. And these two have been kind of intense aspects since maybe the early fall. I don't have the exact date right now. If you want to check it out, it's in my Venus video. But these two have been trying to help us get clear on what we want and what's good for us, and how we can go about getting what we want after getting clear about what we want moving forward. And this is really helpful because now they've been in a stressful aspect, forcing us to question all of these things. Is this still what I want, etc.? But now they're in a harmonious aspect, they're in a trine, they're working together. So there's a sense of we have something figured out by the end of the week. There's a sense of this feels good, and I'm, in my flow and getting what I want right now. And I feel good about being able to go after what I want. So that's all well and good. And it's important, just to kind of tie in, we've had a lot of personal planets retrograde over since Mars started its retrograde at the end of June. And this is all helping us get really clear on ourselves and what we want, because in the first after the first week of the year, we have 6 weeks of all planets moving direct, which means we're about to go fast. So we've been kind of being more reflective, maybe not having as much certainty about going forward. We've been kind of marinating a lot, reflecting a lot, reevaluating. But by the end of the year, we really know, what we need to do to go forward, and it is going to go fast. And Jupiter is going fast already as it enters Sagittarius. It's going to be clearing those first few degrees at a very rapid pace. So that's this week in astrology. A lot of big changes. And again, with that new moon, it's in Scorpio. It's about resourcefulness. It's about doing what we can with what we can. And one of those things that we can do is we have a voice and we can use it, and we can go out and vote and work to make a change. The new moon is ruled by Mars. Mars is in Aquarius, and Aquarius is that sign about working together. We're going to work together to make a shared vision come into being. So that's what we can do this week, and I'm anxious to see how it all turns out. And on one final note I will leave you with is jumping even another week ahead to the next Friday, November 16th. We have another big energetic change up. Venus stations direct, Mercury stations retrograde in Sagittarius, and Mars moves into Pisces, finally getting out of Aquarius, because Mars has been in Aquarius since May or June. So we're finally going to be in a new territory, and it's going to be big and exciting. And yeah, anyways, see you at the voting booth.